One. Good morning, everybody. It's Jo Salter here from Where Does It Come From? Welcome to Ethical Brands for Fashion Revolution 2020. Today is all about activism, and I am so delighted to welcome Tamsin Lejeune to discuss with us her journey through activism. It's an amazing story. So I'd like to introduce you. This is Tamsin. Hello, Tamsin.
Hi, very pleased to be a part of this. I'm really impressed with all you've done this week already.
Well, thank you. I'm sure you must be having an amazingly busy week yourself, a Fashion Revolution week.
Incredibly. I mean, yeah, so our global network represents a lot of suppliers and it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. We've had quite a few suppliers talking on the conference, that's been one of the advantages of having a sort of online conference, is we've been able to involve some of the suppliers a bit more, which has given them
Sure.
a voice and let people hear what they have to say, which is great.
Yeah, this is
Anyway,
going forward.
well, we hugely appreciate you spending the time this morning. This interview is going out later today, so it's going to be hot off the press. So first of all, Tamsin, I wanted to ask you, what really got you involved? How did you become an ethical fashion activist?
So my background is in architecture. I studied as an architect and qualified. I grew up in Africa, um, which was a charmed childhood, but also made it clear to me that there is another side to this world we live in. I think growing up in the UK, you can sometimes be blinkered to the way the majority of the world lives. And I encountered street children and challenges quite young and early on. So I guess that was embedded in my goals, my personal goals, to try and work in a way that I could do something about that. So I suppose at 18, I spent a year teaching in Honduras and Guatemala. And again, worked with street children and saw how the other side lived. And more than anything, saw the opportunities for intervention of some kind, particularly in Guatemala. So if you've ever been there or seen films around Guatemala, it's absolutely stunning. The quality of the craftsmanship, the beauty of the products that are created there, and yet none of those ever make it to the international market. And I came back with suitcases full of beautifully embroidered product that when I arrived in London, I found they weren't really things that I could wear on the streets of London. And so at the same time, I started to, being in design, recognize and go to graduate shows and recognize that there were, the level of talent that's coming out of UK fashion colleges is incredible. People who have the skills, exactly the skills that these artisans in Guatemala needed to be able to open doors to market. And I suppose that sparked an idea. And then I started by launching my own brand and spent quite a long time finding out how to find sustainable supplies. So sustainability wasn't really a word then. It was much more about fair trade and ethics. So I was looking for fair trade. I was looking at how could I build a business that would change lives, that would use fashion as a catalyst. I mean, fashion is creative and wonderful and creates fulfilling jobs when done well from one end of the supply chain to the other. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I spent some time looking for suppliers. It was difficult. It was difficult to find, particularly fair trade suppliers. There wasn't really a mechanism. I joined and got involved with the World Fair Trade Organization, which was IFAT at the time. They'd had a conference in Newcastle where for once, they have conferences all over the world. It's a very inspiring organization. And I met with some suppliers which launched my supply chain, so produced in Bangladesh, found that worked with a incredible fair trade group called Aranya, still working. I'd recommend it to anybody who's considering their own label. They produce beautiful product using jamdani, using kantha embroidery, khadi. Right from the outset, I wanted to find a supplier that had these skills to produce beautiful product, but also the capability to do that at a higher level. So what I'd found was that, and working with, at the time, there was Oxfam, there was Tradecraft, there were a few, People Tree had started. Most of the product out there, though, was quite basic. It wasn't design-led. It was, and it didn't incorporate the most beautiful product. It didn't incorporate Jamdani, it didn't incorporate Cantha. And I met with Safia at the time quite early on and discussed it. And the challenges are that that product is expensive. So if you want to create a range, a fashion range or a product using that and sell it and have it be a success, you need to sell at a higher price point. And the challenge there was that the quality of production wasn't up to scratch to be able to sell at that price. So my next challenge was, how do I tackle that? And I'm having studied and studied with a background in architecture. It's all about creative problem solving. So turning challenges into opportunities. How can this become something that I can make something good out of? So I traveled to Bangladesh to visit Aranya, and in advance made connections with some other brands. So the opportunity with Bangladesh is that it's one of the most, it is a hub for garment production. So not only is it one of the largest fair trade networks in the world, but on the other side of the coin, there's factories mass producing for some of the biggest brands in the world. And there are also production units. I connected with one who was producing for Ghost at the time. So producing very high quality product. So through connecting them with the fair trade suppliers I was working with, we were able to create a supply chain that could produce a completely different sort of product.
That sounds amazing. That sounds
and just that I imagine that there are some people going to be listening to this who are either running small brands or considering so. And I had one of the most useful tips, I've passed this on a few times, from a man called David Jones, who's still out there offering advice and mentoring to people running fashion businesses. I'd advise you to check him out. But he gave me an invaluable piece of advice, which was, if you want to make sales, if you want to create a brand that is successful, you need to speak to your audience. And when you're selling to boutiques, which was my approach, I sell to wholesale, you need to get closer to that audience, find ways to get closer to that audience and understand what they need. What you can do is, on a Tuesday morning, very often the buyer will be in the boutiques. Now, of course, you might need to wait a few months now that we're in lockdown, but I took that tip and went around the shops in Portobello, which I felt were right for my brand, high end, slightly boho. And I took my range of samples and spoke to the buyers there in those shops. And they were there, he was right. And they were really interested. And it was an interesting time because I had a good story behind it, fair trade. And they gave me tips and they looked at the product and said, no, that's not going to work. And this is why, things I could never have guessed. So I went back to the drawing board, produced products, and they sold out the first time around because they were in line, they were in line with what the buyers had wanted. So anyway, that's a slight sidetrack. No. But what I learned from that experience was that there's a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs, for brands to really change lives. And I got together with several others. I spent some time collecting people. So this was around 2004, 2005, attending shows like Pure, Aesthetica at London Fashion Week was just about to launch. There were actors, Ursula and others, actors who were starting to make moves in this sector. So we joined forces and founded the Ethical Fashion Forum with 20 founding members, whose purpose and mission was to make it easier for fashion professionals and fashion businesses to operate in a way that changed lives effectively, that created products that we had a common objective to create fashion businesses that maximize benefits to people and minimized impact on the environment. And we grew from there. One of our first projects was called Design for Life Ghana, where we worked with artisans in Ghana. So we were commissioned for a handsome fee of £2,500 to run a competition. And we got together fashion colleges and fashion students. The challenge was that there was a group of women in progress in Ghana, who were producing quite beautiful products for children and women. And the children's wear range was selling well. It was quite ethnic prints, batik prints. The women's wear range was not doing well. It it was not, again, it was a bit too ethnic. So we brought in design teams, product design, tech design together with a buyer from Topshop, and they produced ranges. 3 winners went out to, or 2 winners went out to Ghana and worked with Women in Progress. They produced ranges that were successful and sold out several seasons running in Topshop, who committed to buying them, and the women had, as a result, their wages increased tenfold. And for this tiny little intervention of ours, for a very small budget, we'd managed to catalyze something that I feel could have enormous impact with thousands of entrepreneurs of this nature, having the skills, having the will to change things. Everybody won. So that's where the concept for Common Objective came. How can you catalyze how can you catalyze the expertise and the creativity of thousands of people to change the way an industry operates?
Yes,
and
very,
yeah.
I'm just paraphrasing, really. It's that interesting mediation, isn't it, between the skilled artisans at one side who've got these amazing skills that are not getting through, and then also being able to feed back to them what it is that will help their products sell in the markets that they're trying to sell them in.
Yeah. And for years it's been done, and we've worked on these projects, and all with good intentions. The UN and other bodies have funded projects where an expert will go out and work with the group for 3 months or whatever, and upskill them with a view to having market access. But realistically, these artisanal groups are competing in a world of business where they're competing with people that they have no means of being on a level playing field with. So people who've graduated even people who've graduated with a top degree from fashion colleges struggle to make it work, to make it a success in the fashion industry. So how can an artisan remove thousands of miles from the market without a training, without access to buyers or connections, and with limited communication capabilities ever compete? Whereas if you bring in an entrepreneur, a graduate from that fashion college, if you bring in a third party who has capabilities to sell, that be a retailer, then you're talking and things can change. So so in 2016 we raised funds, and Harold Tillman, who was the longest serving chair of the British Fashion Council, joined us as chair of the Ethical Fashion Group. We formed a for-profit company, the Ethical Fashion Group, but grounded in our mission. So it's set up as a B Corp. We have B Corp principles behind it, enshrined in our articles. But we needed to be a for-profit in order to raise equity investment. And we raised investment from organizations like Roland Murray, representatives from Vivienne Westwood, some larger supplier groups. And they backed our vision, which was to create a site that would turn sustainability from a cost into an opportunity. And so Common Objective works in 2 ways. I'd encourage any of you, if you're not already on it, to join. It's free to join. It's a bit like LinkedIn for sustainable fashion, a combination of LinkedIn and Alibaba, the sourcing site, I'd say. We've now got 30,000 members in 150 countries, and they're really incredible. I mean, one of the highlights of my day is the emails I get through. Everybody who joins gets an email from me, and I read them all the responses. And they're amazing. They're just amazing, the kind of people and businesses that are joining every day. But we've also, during coronavirus, opened up all of our premium content. So there's a ton of tools, over 300 resources and tools that are available for you to access free for until the end of July. So the way it works, the site, is 2 algorithms. The first is a matching algorithm. So when you join, the site asks you to enter in certain information about who you are, what you're looking for, builds up a profile around you, so that when you land on your dashboard, you're matched with, be it suppliers you might be looking for, buyers, information, training, connections. And then the second algorithm is a weighting algorithm. So the more sustainable a business, the higher its search ranking. And this is where we bring in our mission. We want the site to be able to turn sustainability from being costly, difficult, challenging, into something that you can commercially benefit, why should it be a cost? You know, why should businesses that are operating sustainably and ethically and to fair trade standards be penalized? Why should they have to pay more and work harder? They should be the ones that are trending, that are hitting buyers' inboxes first, and that are getting put in the spotlight. And so that's our mission. That was our goal with Co. So you can join as an individual. It's trade happens between people. But then you can create a business profile, whatever your business and organization. You can be quite early startup, you can be a consultancy, set up a business on the site.
No, we're on there. Where does it come from is on there, and I'm very happy to be. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yes, and I'd also like to say to you about where does it come from, that we, as part of coronavirus and part of our push to drive and further collaboration, we'd love to offer you a free premium upgrade for your profile.
Oh, wonderful.
So that you can use our notice board function. So the notice board is a community function that allows you to promote your events, get them out to a targeted audience.
Oh, great. Oh, too late for this one. Maybe I'll put it on there later for the rest
Some of the content after the events.
Yeah, no, that would be really good. One question I was going to ask you, I mean, as a brand owner, that I completely resonate with what you're saying about sustainability being an extra cost and perceived as an extra cost.
Yeah.
How do you feel that we can encourage people to accept the fact that things will cost their true cost if you're paying artisans a fair price for their wonderful skills?
Yeah, I think we need a shift in consumer consciousness, and the closest I've seen to hope that that can happen is Fashion Revolution. The Fashion Revolution movement is incredibly inspiring to me, and of course thousands of millions of others, as it's leveraged social media in a way that we have a chance of competing with corporate ad budgets. So we as consumers, as a global consumer network, have been bombarded for the last 30 years with messages to buy and to buy for less. And this is not an inherent means of, this is not inherent to consumer culture. It's a culture that's been created. 50 years ago, we didn't buy this way. We looked and we bought things we loved and we treasured. And it's an extremely lucrative model for businesses to sell lots cheaply. It means people spend more. So the myth that this is about democratizing, and I do recognize that fashion should be, the ability to enjoy and love fashion should be open to all. But this being used as an argument to democratize fashion by big businesses that are selling lots of product cheaply doesn't add up, because the statistics demonstrate that people spend a lot more, and it's almost an addiction through buying lots and lots of things cheaply and regularly. And so it's perfectly possible to participate in fashion in a different way. I think the rental model is also exciting, and I would like to see the biggest brands, if they're serious about commitments to sustainability, about doing things differently, they should be operating a rental model through the high street stores. I'm not going to mention names, but I'm sure you're aware of the businesses putting themselves out there at the forefront of sustainability. Let me see them put their actions where
yes, indeed. Well, funny enough, we're having a discussion later about how big brands approach ethical fashion. I think some of that will come out during that. That the phrase greenwashing springs to mind, but we won't cover that one too much here.
And to be fair, I mean, I think one of the hardest jobs in the industry of all is professionals within large businesses who are committed to sustainability, and thousands of them are. I mean, we worked with thousands of them joined Co, desperate to do things within their roles, desperately uncomfortable with the situation and wanting to do things differently, and trying to change the direction of the juggernaut in that position is one of the hardest jobs of all. So if we can support them to do that, then that's it.
Yes, I mean, it is a model, isn't it? I mean, you talk about it's people dealing with people, and it is, and most people are decent people who want the right things, but they get caught up in the system and the business model that they're working in. They feel pressured by it.
I think the people at the top hold responsibility for that, for changing the KPIs.
Yes, they do, definitely do. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about culture and buying culture, because we had an interview with Shailini Seth Armin from Moral Fibre Fabrics, who I
Oh,
believe that
wonderful,
you know. Yeah, because
wonderful
she's one of my
organization.
friends and suppliers. And
Yeah,
she was expressing her hope that after lockdown, people might have realised that they don't need the things that they think they need. So we've all survived with half the income, half the product, half the shopping at least than we've had before. And she's hoping that we were both a bit nervous of whether the juggernaut would start up again afterwards and we
yeah.
would all feel pressured, or maybe people have had a deeper realization that they don't need all this stuff. I mean, what do you think?
I think that this is a unique crisis, different to any before. I mean, if you look at previous recessions, there has been a tendency after a recession for people to jump back and almost buy double what they did before. I don't think that will happen this time. I think this has changed the way people think about their lives, being forced to remain indoors and to consider again the things that matter, spend more time with family, recognize quality time, recognize and at the same time engage more online.
Yeah.
I do see hope for us having reset for the and potential for us to reset the way industry works. I think the open studio movement is amazing. The whole concept behind that is that we get closer to understanding the connection between the clothes we buy and the people who design them and produce them, and therefore understanding the price implication of that and recognizing the value of the product, which we've lost touch with the value of the
Yeah.
product. And I think what you were saying earlier, the fact that more suppliers are engaging, if we can, through being more of a global community online, if we can hear their voices, I think that will help things too. Our ambition with Common Objective is to move into B2C in the future. And I think there's scope for a model to drive change. It hasn't happened so far. We don't have, many have tried and many are doing fantastic jobs to bring together the sustainable brands and showcase them and marketplace them. And we need more of that, and we're here to support it. But I think what we could see more of is those platforms, and to make this possible, the platforms need to gain in strength and power, emphasizing and supporting different buyer and consumer behavior.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
we
definitely.
would like to see something like an Etsy for sustainable fashion,
Love that.
whereby as a consumer on that platform, you gain through buying well. So through demonstrating, you gain a rating, through buying less and buying well and buying from the right products, which gives you a commercial opportunity, which might give you discounts, might give you an opportunity. You'd be a good buyer, you'd be a good consumer, and brands would therefore give you privileges. That's what I'd like to see.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I totally agree that at the moment the buyers have the heavier part of the balance, don't they? They have the power. They can choose whether somebody's business fails or doesn't fail, or whether some artisans get to eat or whether they don't get to eat.
Right.
And that's just that is the model that we're in at the moment. There's this weird imbalance. So yeah, I suppose it's embracing that and accepting that unfortunately that's the way it is at the moment, and maybe trying to tilt the balance back the other way through sharing the voices of these people. And
Yeah.
maybe now we've actually had this strange opportunity to embrace video technology. I mean, we all knew it was there, but now we can actually link up. We've had to do it, and I can't see us going back from doing it the way that we're doing it.
No, and I
So,
think there's scope for it to catalyze more relationships, like the one I mentioned earlier with Design for Life Ghana, which was essentially brilliant young entrepreneurs from the UK connecting with brilliant business owners in Ghana,
yeah.
and coming up with a solution. We'd love to see more of that happening.
Yeah, no, it was funny. I was talking to Kapil Shah, who works for the Jatan Trust, which is an organic farmers organisation in India. I interviewed him to be shown yesterday, and he was saying that he could see now that people will go on remote field tours and remote cotton farm tours
Of
and
course,
hear
great
from the
idea.
farmers, you know,
Yeah.
and I think we have a huge advantage as English speakers, and for a lot of these people it's a second language, but all you need to do is try and put interpreters in there. There's got to be ways of doing it that you can really see these people's faces and get to know them, and so important. And I think that will shift the paradigm more towards buyers understanding some of those things and not just looking at price. I hope so.
Yeah, the human connection in the end, which is what has been lost from supply
Yes.
chain.
Very, very much so, yes. I just wanted to say as well, we had Claire Lisserman from your team
Good.
along. She was on a panel on Monday, and she's quoting figures, facts and figures all over the place of, to do with ethical fashion and buyers and everything. And every time we said, wow, they're amazing facts and figures, she said, they're all on Common Objective. You need to go to Common Objective and you can get hold of these facts and figures. So
Yeah, we have a mapping the industry report, which is freely available to all. We also have a section called a toolkit called the 3D Suite, 3D Business Suite. Now, we don't mean 3D printing, we mean business in 3D. So social, environmental, and financial. How do you build a business that does all three effectively? There's a ton of resources and tools that can help you to achieve that. We also have a fabric switch. Fabric switch is probably the most popular element of our product. So a lot of suppliers, brands, but brands and suppliers looking for sustainable alternatives to fabrics. So you can a simple visual showcase of cotton, polyester, and others, where you can see what alternatives. And then you can connect with the suppliers directly on and find out who's the right person within that business and just connect with them.
Brilliant. And then maybe in the future there'll be video links between those people as well.
Yeah, that's very much. I would love to have that happen. This year, we're actually just closing a crowdfund for the company, and we've just gone into overfunding. So we're now 105% funded. So we'll be closing quite soon, but would welcome any investment. So as you can invest from £10. And by investing, you become part of our shareholder community, which means that you'll get updates on the business. And we also have several different benefits for investments at different levels, which give, if you've got a business and you want to get it out there, you can be an investing partner in Co. Our current investors have already, shareholders have had their value of the shares more than double.
Great.
So, and we're seeing, particularly with COVID, and I think we're seeing in a way the opportunity for Co to both drive change in the industry, but also to tap into the needs and demands growing. We've had more and more suppliers engaging with us. They're desperate for buyers. We want to, over the next year, we're going to be using this funds that we've raised to further the potential for us to support those suppliers, get them build buyer markets. As we get more and more SMEs launching, individuals setting up businesses, it's going to be easier than ever before to build your supply chain. For once, the universe is in your favor, it has been difficult for startups to build supply chains, because for suppliers, it's a challenge to work with new businesses. It's such an important part of the industry to have this pipeline work, but it's a challenge. They're going to be much more open to working with new businesses. They're open to any sort of orders. So we want to facilitate that. And one of those ways is through forums. We'll be launching something called Co-Circles, which brings together curated groups so you can find the right people you want to connect with, the right buyers, and get answers to your questions, the right suppliers. So
I personally would love to get involved in any of that, any and all of it. It sounds really good.
We rely on our organisation partners to help spread the word and hopefully support you in your work. We're an aggregator. Collaboration has been a core value at Co. So in our name, Common Objective, we cannot achieve this alone. So if anyone listening has organisations, please do join. I'll do my best our team is somewhat small, but do my best to respond to queries that come in, and if you're doing good things and you've got great events, then I'd love to extend the option to upgrade your profile so that you can get your events out there.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. That's so interesting talking to you, and I feel like I could go off at a tangent and ask you 100 million different questions. So we've talked about Common Objective and Ethical Fashion Forum and your activism. So what do you think are the big things coming along, the big changes that are going to come along in the ethical fashion world?
Good question. So I think the most important one is the shift in consciousness, which is starting to happen. There's been I attended so many industry forums over the years, and the vast majority of the debate has been around the quality aspect of sustainability. So considering the sustainability of fabrics that you're using, the processes, reducing water, all of those are important. But if you look at the statistics that Claire was referring to either earlier on Mapping the Industry report, they're the tip of the iceberg. The vast majority of the impact, negative impact of the industry, comes through quantity. So the quantity consideration, how much is being produced, no matter how brilliantly you improve the fabrics and you improve the processes, if you're doubling your production and creating a cheap product, then it's going to be negligible. The impact of all those changes are going to be negligible. So what we're looking for, and what has started to happen, is the great creative minds of this industry, because we are a creative industry, from the base of the pipeline, those who are graduating and starting out, right to the top, the owners of the H&Ms of this world, to be putting their minds to how do we tackle the business model? How do we maintain a profitable business model? Because the other thing this crisis has put the spotlight on is the need and the demand, the necessity of this industry, and to support livelihoods for thousands and millions of workers all over the world, and the vulnerability of those jobs. So very often we have almost lost in the debate the social side, the people side. There's been so much facts, knowledge, debate around climate change, and it's pressing that we've focused on that, and often the message is buy less, don't buy. And that overlooks the people aspect of fashion, and the fact that fashion business done well does change lives for thousands of people. Even done the way it is in Bangladesh, it's transformed lives, it's supported, changed opportunities for women in immeasurable ways. It's not good enough, it needs to be better. But what we can't do is, what we need to come up with is a solution that transitions us from this unsustainable model towards one that not only safeguards the environment, but supports the people behind the product and supports.
Yeah. For me, it's shifting that balance I was talking about before. Is that so that people are the buyers are not the ones with all the power, so that you're buying less, but you're paying a fair price, and more of that price is going to the people making it. Because the artisans that we've been talking to this week, and I've met through my work, they want to put their heart and soul into it. They want to create beautiful quality things and use all their skills, but they have to be paid fairly for that, which means that the people at the other end of the chain have to recognize that. So I think it's really important that we produce less, but that the livelihoods are not affected or made better, if possible.
I'm excited by the opportunity for manufacturers, supplier groups to be driving this agenda through bringing to the market products, and that can only happen in tandem with entrepreneurs who understand markets. We've seen some really interesting models come out of that, and worth having a look at World Fair Trade Organization website. We partner with the World Fair Trade Organization, and they have recently put out a report which demonstrates the resilience of their fair trade suppliers. So they've measured them, benchmarked them against general business, non-sustainable, non-ethical fair trade business, and found that their businesses are far more resilient. Throughout economic challenges, they've managed to maintain and continue and grow, and it's partly because the founders are so committed to driving change. They'll do whatever it takes to make the business work, but it's partly also because I think the industry is shifting. And I do see the opportunity through initiatives like Open Studio for us to build on this, to build something to emerge from this crisis in a positive way, in a way that we change consumer mindsets, and that we become more united as a global community towards products that can compete in a global market. The Indian production scene is incredible. where you've got amazing designers and amazing suppliers producing product which is able to compete because the price points, because it's produced and made in India, even though it's made fairly, the price points are able to compete.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, there's issues around that, import duties and things like that, which are also things that I think we need to look at. You know, the more you're paying for something, the more import duty you have to pay, which puts the price up. But that's another topic. Oh, kitten!
I just just a little hello. This is
Oh, he's got and he's color coordinated with your jumper as well, with your top. So that's really well planned. That's fashion for you. Anyway, so that's probably a good place to end it. So he obviously requires your attention, but I want to say thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning. We really appreciate it, and have a really fantastic week, the rest of the Fashion Revolution week, and we'll be in touch about content and all that after. So thank you so much, Tamsin.
Well, thank you. Keep up the brilliant work.
We'll do our best.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.